First of all, just wanted to say thank you, Ethan, for joining us here today. And we'll just run a very quick intro to the podcast. By the way, this is the final episode of Onchain Alpha, so I'm very happy that we have Ethan today. For everybody who's joining us today, welcome again to the Onchain Alpha podcast, where we explore the world of on-chain data. We unpack valuable insights and novel applications with the people who are building this ecosystem, your favorite data platforms, writing your favorite threads on Twitter and Farcaster. Make sure you sign up to our newsletter at cryptosapiens.xyz. And thank you to all the projects and people who have made this possible, Mosaic, the Optimism Collective, and Bankless DAO. Today, we're talking to Ethan with Allium. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, it's pronounced Allium.
Okay, great.
I had to Google how to pronounce it when we first came up with the name. So, yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one that struggled to make sure, because you just never know with so many vowels where you put the emphasis on a word like that.
So, I don't know if you know what the meaning of Allium is.
I don't actually. That'd be a nice introduction to Allium.
Yeah. So I think most people don't know. I think we went through like a year and a half of the company before people even knowing what Allium actually meant. So most people think Allium is a metal like aluminum, right? So that's why a lot of people pronounce this Allium and not Allium. And there's also another metal on the periodic table called gallium. So most people think it's a metal. But in fact, an allium is the family of onions, garlics, leeks, shallots, all those bulby vegetables with many layers. And the motivation behind that was when Chenghan, my co-founder, we were starting out Allium, we were like, we want to do every layer, every blockchain out there, so we're not tied to one ecosystem. And then we just Googled onions, and then under onions, it was part of the family of alliums, and there we have it. And so many layers, many ecosystems, and I think that speaks to our ethos of like covering as much breadth of chains as we can, and which is why we covered EVMs, we covered Solana, we covered Bitcoin. We also one of the first few to cover Tron properly. Like we also have the Cosmos ecosystem as well. Lots and lots of L2s. So that gives you some sense of like why we call Allium. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Well, first of all, that's really rad. I actually never knew that. I would have thought metal too, but not because of what you've said, because it sounds like alloy. And usually alloy has to do with like metal, but that's really rad. I really love first of all, I love lore crafting. So I think brands are a big part of a lore of a business, of a project, of any given product. So I like this idea of like thinking of just blockchain in general being like this multi-layered ecosystem, not just L1, L2, L3, but also sideways when you think of all of the different blockchains that should be communicating with one another. And I'm glad you said Tron, by the way, because I actually came from the Tron ecosystem. That was where I first started building in 2016. Wow. I thought that blockchain was tremendously, and I think continues to be, I just haven't been so active there recently, but continues to be one of the more accessible and efficient chains out there. And early in my career in the blockchain space, they were hugely helpful and supportive, both by helping us giving us PR support, but also financial support to build on their network. So shout out to Tron. I think that
I think we were surprised. I think like maybe a year and a half, more than a year ago, when people started asking us for Tron data, and we realized that no one in the ecosystem had the full history of Tron data, and on top of that, there was some nuances to indexing Tron data that is not just like your EVM indexing. There was the TRX transfers that we had to get all these edge cases out. But I'm very glad we did, because out of that whole work is that we did this with Brevin Howard Digital, and when I think Peter Johnson, who leads one of the venture capital arm there, wrote this report called The Relentless Rise of Stablecoins. I think it was probably in Q3 last year. And I think, we were one of the data providers that provided most of the Tron data, but we all know USDT on Tron is, last year definitely was the majority of the volumes. There was always a lot of talk about, hey, Tron has a lot of activity, but where's the data to show it? And I think we were one of the earlier ones to index all the Tron data and kind of push that narrative forward for stablecoins. And then together, we are always behind the scenes. We're a data indexer, but it's nice to see our work people using our data to like, hey, shine a light on stablecoins. And then right soon after, I think probably 1 or 2 months after, Nick Carter from Castle Island also gave a keynote at Token 2049 about stablecoins, and we also helped him with the data sets, including Tron that we had, and that furthered the narrative of stablecoins. And now it's nice to fast forward till today. You see even it's stablecoins. The narrative of like the use cases of stablecoins is now in the mainstream, and it's like mainstream. It's like, oh, what use cases on crypto has product market fit, so to speak, and like payments, stablecoins, and we're starting to see a lot of this. We just see all this. It's just nice to see it mainstream today. Like a year and a half ago, they were like, no one pays anything on chain. But I think you talked about Tron in 2016, and I think like the one thing I learned through this whole discovery of the Tron data set was that all the people that use Tron a lot of them don't reside in the US, all UK, all these like major English speaking, or even crypto Twitter for that matter. And I think a lot of times when we tweeted out a lot of the Tron data, people were, we're always like, hey, what's actually happening on Tron? And I think as we went down this journey, we realized that like people using USDT on Tron was a reflection of their own local economy, their country, the geopolitical situation, and it's actually the currency. USDT on Tron is used by lots of countries, lots of cross-border payments, and any country of capital controls. It's their de facto chain of choice.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it actually doesn't surprise me that USDT, kind of has a lot of activity, a lot of volume on the Tron network. I remember early on, there were big moves by Tron to integrate USDT and to have a better relationship with that product, with that stable coin. So I know that it's been a very long relationship that's been growing, and it's really good to see that it's really adding a lot of value both to the network, but also to the people that use it. And I did read that article, and I actually was happily surprised to see a lot of what was being reported about USDT, Tron, and stablecoins in general.
Yeah.
So before we get too far, I also want to make sure that we give you the space to kind of introduce yourself, especially as you've mentioned that you don't really do a lot of these podcasts. So for anybody who's first watching you in this podcast, tell us a little bit about yourself and where Allium started.
So I think this is my first ever interview podcast I've ever done in my life. I think just a bit about myself, a bit of Allium. So I think a bit about my background. So, funnily enough, I'm probably one of the few people that came from the AI, specifically NLP, LLM space, and then went into crypto. So you could say that like I had perfect timing. AI went up an exponential 1,000x, millionx hype cycle, and when I switched over to crypto, it basically crashed 99%, maybe 95%. And despite that, like I spent about 6 months researching a lot in the blockchain space to decide to leave the AI space. And the main reason behind that is that because one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was in the AI space, even pretty early on in the previous AI hype cycle, was that data, like high quality data, provided with these enterprise guarantees, was a bottleneck to better models, better outcomes, better for customers, for enterprises, institutions, and then when I started researching the crypto space, I realized that there were a lot of data providers already, but also everybody like this back then was, let's say, $1 to $1.5 trillion market cap, and it was this. Everybody was just referring to Etherscan, right? And so it's kind of funny how like people are referring to Etherscan as a source of truth for what's happening on chain, and it they have to use it for like $1.5 trillion of market cap to monitor that, and I thought that was insane. And so I think when I when set up to start Allium, I basically did as much market research as I can to see all the different pain points, and the patterns I saw in the AI space repeated itself in the blockchain space. Everybody had a data problem. They don't necessarily call it a data problem. They're more of like, it's more like, hey Humpty, which protocols are trending today? And then you're like, I don't know. And then then you do have a data problem, right? Like, and you could say that like, because we index a data set now, there's a new like Tron a year ago, then stablecoins became a thing. So people always had a data problem, but they never called it having a data problem. It's always serving in some ultimate goal. And so when we went out to start Allium, we knew that like if we index all the data, made it very high quality, made it very simple to use, right? We normalized a lot of the schemas. For example, we store the balances of every wallet at every given block height. We actually compute the exact balance across many different chains. And then thirdly, like we just make it very reliable, very dependable, good SLAs. And I think it's a very simple thing. So, which is why our tagline is just accurate, simple, and fast data, right? Like there's nothing magical to what we do at Allium. And I think the hard part here is just to do what we do, but consistently over a very, very long period of time and forever. And that's kind of what we've always been focusing on. So TLDR, like anytime you have a data plumbing issue, right? Like, and we got your back, and that's kind of where we fit in this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks for that very comprehensive introduction, but also for describing some of the challenges with data. I agree with you. I know back early in the Ethereum days, and also kind of from my early work on Tron, the Etherscan was always kind of looked at as this source of truth, and that was like the only place that you can go and really derives or makes sense of what was happening on chain, right? I also remember one of the early developments on Tron that was considered one of the most valuable products created there was TronScan, which was just really a fork of Etherscan, because really those were the only ways that people assumed to be the way to like just look at what's happening on the blockchain. It's really great to see just how far we've come in such short amount of time. Really, I mean, 2016, 2017 wasn't that long ago. But of course, everything in the, in emergent markets moves really quickly. I was looking at your website, and, first of all, really cool website, really inspires me to like do better with like the work that I'm doing, in my own developments. But I would say it looks like you really talk about data analysts from different perspectives, right? You're showing their accounting and auditing, stablecoin, NFTs and DEXs, institutional staking. Like there's a lot of different, verticals in this data market that you're really trying to target and service as well. Can you describe really how you got there? Because I mean, really, data is such a broad term, especially in the on-chain or blockchain space. Mm-hmm. How did you identify the different areas or segments of this data market that you wanted to service, and how did you go about to like tailoring these like different services for them?
Yeah, so the good thing about the blockchain is that a lot of it maybe even uses the same data set, right? So for example, for accounting auditing use cases, if you parse out all the stablecoins properly, get the proper the burn, the mints, and like all these like now it gets a bit more complicated recently, because now, for example, I think Tether USDC, you can actually like freeze tokens, so you have to keep track of that. So once you actually account for all of that, it just lends itself nicely for accounting and auditing. And maybe to answer your question more specifically, so I think the way we've always approached it was I think similar to what I mentioned at the beginning. Like most people don't know they have a data problem or data gap deficiency. I think and it's always like the fifth priority, the 10th priority, right? Like it's always like, and I think over time, like I think if you start understanding all the different, and I think maybe to step it back, I think the reason why we have this wide variety of use cases is the fact that the blockchain is both, number one, like a financial ledger of everything that ever happened, and number two, it's also like a computer. It's a Turing machine that can produce anything and everything out there, right? And so what does this mean? This means that it is both a system of record, right, for all these uh, companies. And because it's a quote unquote computer, some people like to call it a database, it actually powers a lot of applications out there. And so what does this mean? This means that basically anybody that touches crypto needs, like, they have to access the data in an easy way, right? You look at the non-crypto companies, how historically this has been done is that, they ingest all their user data into their own website, but then now everybody has to interact with the blockchain and read the data from the blockchain. And so once you have that insight that like every single crypto company probably needs to touch the data aspect, it's not that, it doesn't take that long to figure out which use cases they have, and it will just organically emerge. And especially if you say that, like, back to the original point I made, is that people will be like, do you have a data problem? No. Do you know which protocol is earning the most revenue for the past 10 hours? No. Do you want to know that? Yes. Oh, yeah. I realize now I realize I don't even know how to answer that question. So, and the value of the question is very important for me as a business, as an analyst. And so that's kind of how we discover a lot of these use cases along the way.
Yeah, that brings to mind, I had a conversation, my last podcast was with Carl, previously with HyperCerts, now with Open Source Observer, longtime steward of the Gitcoin ecosystem, Optimism, really cool guy, huge data nerd. We geek out at times talking about like different ways that we can, I guess, improve the data ecosystem more through analysis than anything else. And one of the things that he brought up was, there's actually tremendous opportunity in the data, but there's so few analysts that can do anything with it because there's not a lot of people focusing on that right now. But I think that is changing. And I think products like yours are helping to change that, right? What are your thoughts in terms of like data accessibility? Or at least accessibility with the products that are being built today? Like, should there be a focus more on like, how can we make this a better experience for an analyst that has never really worked with blockchain data? And, are you kind of thinking about that with Allium?
Yeah. So I think one of the, I think that has been core to like what we've always wanted to do from, um, like how we design our schemas, and internally we call it data UX. Like what's the user experience of the data schemas? And I think internally, like I always had this philosophy, also because I used to be more from a data scientist background. If I had to do one more left join with a table that has null values than I have to, I would get so pissed off, right? Like that is just unacceptable. Like it's just annoying because every time you do a left join, you have missing rows, and once that happens, that goes like 2 hours of your life just like figuring out like what is missing and whether or not you can live with the missing pieces, right? So that's like 2 hours of your life you'll never get back. And talking about like the accessibility or like lowering the barrier to entry from an education perspective, we were probably one of the first few companies that decided to represent the entire. We started with EVMs, the entire blockchain, as more of a credit and debit system. So we were using basically what the Medici people figured out in like Renaissance period of like, maybe it's them, maybe it's not, but around that same period where you break down every single transaction into two rows, either a credit or debit. And so when you want to find out someone's point in time, you want to find out someone's historical balance at a point in time, or the net amount of flows in and out of any wallet, you just have to like query in some one column, right? And I think because intuitively, I think any non-crypto person who would understand what a credit and debit system is. It's a universal thing. And so now when they're trying to interact with the data, they're like, oh, I just have to sum this table, and I probably get what I need. And we go a couple steps further beyond that, and also say that like, hey, okay, we parse out what the credit is, what token type it is, what the USD price was at that time. And so everything is already done for you. Like, so, and we also compute the exact balances as well. And because if you actually see most chats that get shared on, I mean, everywhere, in general, like, on crypto data, it's always either balance over time or net flows over time, right? Like the only two, there's only two types of charts that form 80% of all charts, right? So my goal is always to build that building block such that if I already sort the balance, you don't need to write like a 500 line query to like sum up the balance, join with prices, get this and get that. So a lot of that philosophy from the very, very early on, we did our balances schema probably almost 2 years ago at this point. We started with the first iteration of our balances schema. And I can tell you the balances schema is probably our most expensive schema we've ever built at this company. It's the most annoying, the most mistake prone. And it's just with the rebuild many times. Imagine we now update the balance of every single wallet that ever exists in real time today. So that's what the system that we've ended up on, and it's just a lot of work. And but I think we decided to make the investments from the very beginning because we thought it was necessary. Yeah.
No, I mean that sounds like an incredible effort, and definitely something that's very valuable too. I can see that already. What's the process for creating these schemas? And I ask because I built a product about 2 years ago, and we were provisioning on-chain, off-chain data to generate like credentials for DAO members. So to try to find a way to like go from like the financialization of your members to, proof of work, credentials that gives you access to certain things, including incentives and rewards. And we were building schemas, and it was actually a very tiring effort. What does that look like for you? And do you see like AI playing a role, or does it already play a role when you start to at least explore or define some of these schemas?
So I've been asked this question a lot for the past 2.5 years because I came from the NLP, natural language processing background, and they were always saying like, why don't you just put an AI on top of it? And I knew enough that I did not want to do it myself yet because I knew it would be a huge resource investment that as a seed stage company, you can't just pour millions of dollars into. And also the tech was there, but it wasn't quite there yet. That being said, I think the recent advancements that we've seen on like creating queries, like replacing the need for you to memorize our 1,000 schemas we have, but getting an LLM model to recommend you things. We actually just deployed this into our product a week ago. So you can actually type a natural language question, and then it'll completely answer how to like query our schemas. We actually have that. We haven't actually announced it yet, but we just launched it into production for our existing customers last week. And I've been fairly impressed. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's going to make the data schemas even more accessible, but we'll see. I think it's still very early days, and I think that's again for me, it's like until like people really love it, then I know that we've made it. But right now, I think we're very far away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great response. And I mean, I guess I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on that because of what you mentioned of what your background was. So I'm really glad to get your perspective on that. As we started talking about blockchain data and looking at it from a, I guess a broader sense and not just like something when it comes to like layer 2s and 3s, what do you think though about the growing infrastructure or ecosystem, like as it goes higher in the stack? Like how will that change the complexity, or will it actually reduce the complexity with the data that we are working with as we introduce like L2s and even now like L3s? I think like Syndicate has been announcing the launch of several L3s just last week or the last couple of weeks.
I've been rushing to try and find an RPC indexer to index that data. I think the complexity is going to, I mean, I'm just, for all these different layers, all these different alliums out there, I mean, I think my perspective is this, like, as long as they can build a good enough user experience that their customers don't care, I don't care what happens under the hood, I just hope that at least whatever apps they're building for those customers, users, whatever use case that is, that takes off. In terms of from an operational perspective, it'll definitely adds more operational overhead for indexes like us. But on the other hand, it also shows the importance for indexes like this, because like I don't think with the proliferation of number of new chains, there's the Orbit with Arbitrum, OP has their own like super chain stack, and then Polygon has CDK, and then like everybody now, and there's always the Cosmos ecosystem anyway. And I don't think any one team, any one like protocol team can keep up with date of everything. Like any one company can do everything, and so my suspicion is that like data providers like us, like Allium, would we just do the data part really well, but we do it super broad, right? And we just do it well, and we help to kind of like tame and like manage the chaos of these sprawling chains everywhere, and we've been very focused on making sure that we are very efficient and doing that and this fast. It's just a lot of work that we have to do, and yeah. So there's no easy path out of this, right? If people want to use a certain chain, they use a certain chain, and you just have to index that chain very quickly.
Yeah, and I definitely don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I've actually been quite surprised to see how fast things have accelerated since, the op stack was released, and just how many different chains started to work with that. And now to see that even continue to grow to like more app specific chains, I don't see that slowing down either.
Yeah. So we'll see how this pans out. Like it's the surface area that we have to cover is a lot, but I think our goal is always to build leverage internally. Like, how can we build stuff to be more efficient than we are today than compared to last month, right? And how can we automate as much as we can, and because we're just very focused on that one piece to solve in this whole entire industry, and that's why we just have that clear goal of being the best at that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and one thing, I guess, the back of my head is kind of like asking, how do you even like validate adding or integrating a chain that just launched? Because for all you know, they may not actually last, and it's a significant effort on your part that kind of gets thrown into the bin if it doesn't work out.
I think historically we've always been the fairly fast-moving indexer, like that is at the enterprise grade, and I think the short answer is that some of them will work out, some of them won't work out, but you just got to keep going. I mean, when we indexed Tron data more than a year ago, everybody thought every time I was in dinners, events in the US, people thought I was crazy. I kid you not.
Like, yeah, I can see that.
People. Why are you wasting your time on this, right? And also, like, when we're probably the first, probably still the only data provider with ordinals and BRC20 data all in one giant database. We're still the only ones. We started that about 15 months ago, because we work very closely with Magic Eden, even pre-launch, and like. You can imagine that, like, before ordinals were a thing, or like really became what it is today, we just said we're going to do it, right? And we just went ahead and did it. And I mean, could I have predicted anything? No, right? But again, it's just about being very, very good at what you do. And what we do is, like, anytime anybody has a data plumbing problem, like, I want them to come to us, because I'm pretty sure we can meet their business goals pretty fast. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to solve our partners' problems in the most. If we can save them money, save them time, save them business opportunity costs, like, that's kind of where we fit in.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear. I mean, it just sounds like you also have all these systems in place where you can bootstrap things quite quickly. You can start plugging things in quite quickly. I also love the fact that you use like this data plumber naming. I think I saw that on your bio too, and I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Anyways, that is neither here nor there. I guess
that's what we do. This data plumbing. I mean, this like, people always say that, like, well, this, don't worry. Like, when your pipe leaks, just call me. Other than that, you'll get it. You know when you know, type of thing. And if your pipe's not leaking, you don't need to talk to me. yeah.
So, what are some of the interesting things are seeing people doing now with Allium? Because I'm sure you're working with a lot of customers, not just the blockchains themselves, but the customers that actually need that data.
Yeah, so I think I think one of the more interesting so as part of the side quest in the past 4 to 5 months, we actually helped most of the major protocols do their airdrop Sybil detection. We helped Jito do the Sybil detection. We helped Jupiter do their Sybil detection. We helped Wormhole also do the Sybil detection. So we clustered all these different wallets across different chains. And then and we did our best effort to basically say like, hey, if these wallets basically did the same action at around the same time or funded by the same address, like probably the same person, and of course, hopefully we save tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for these protocols. And it was fun to see. Like for me, that was exciting for me personally because that the team had a lot of fun, but on top of that, it's the like I came more from an analytics background before, machine learning background, and this was the confluence of like the infrastructure and the cluster, like the complicated graph algorithms you can do all in one again. And yeah, and I think that was super fun in terms of like the exciting use cases that has emerged from our infrastructure. I would love for protocols to be able to self-serve this airdrop symbol detection themselves in the future, right? But it's just very intense work right now. A lot of work that needs to be done. And then on the other side of things, that I think where people always do not know is that we do real time data. We're one of the few analytics providers that also power all these real time applications. Because we built a completely separate data platform for that. And the use case is left of answering a business question. The use case of like, I just don't want my application to die. It's like, I just want it to be run smoothly. And a good example for that is Phantom Wallet. They're one of our customers. We work closely with them, and it was supporting them. I think it was in Jupiter when we were supporting their the Jupiter airdrop with Phantom, and I think we literally had to spin up 4 more databases over the weekend to prepare for the airdrop launch to basically hit I think like 80,000 queries per second at peak, so that it doesn't go down, and like I think it was very fun working with like just being number one, it's fun to be in the center of the action of like the crypto world, right? But also number two, it's also a very fun engineering problem to solve, right? So at Allium, all of us are still engineers. We have no non-engineers in the company still today. Everyone is an engineer in the company. And so like, I think just being an engineer, just imagine like if you tell an engineer like, hey, like you can come in, you can spend a lot of money to scale all these systems out. And by the way, these are mission critical. Like the crypto industry depends on you. Solana's price probably depends on it, right? So I think it's just like high stakes, high adrenaline, and I think it's very fun to see how I didn't think the industry would get here so soon, but it's nice to see that I think like scaling these systems out at the enterprise institutional grade level is like there are use cases right that we see in the Web2 space in like every single day, right? Like I think like all the Web2 companies, they operate at a different scale, and we just get to do the same thing for this industry.
You mentioned airdrops, which I think is a big part of this ecosystem still, for different reasons. There are airdrops that are built to retroactively reward good actions, right, on your network. And I think the best example of that is Optimism. They've been leading the way with RPGF. But I think mainly airdrops are an onboarding tool for many of these companies. And you mentioned how Sybil detection is hugely important to ensure that these companies aren't wasting their money, because it's a lot of money that goes out many times at once, right? It's not phased, like Optimism has. So it's very important to try to understand the people that, or at least the actions that you're going to be rewarding, and making sure that people aren't gaming that. And I guess on that same thread, I've already seen kind of airdrops themselves evolving a little bit to try to both reduce the gamification, I suppose, of the actions, but also to try to increase that actions over time. What are your thoughts as someone who's been working with like companies and preventing Sybil attacks on those airdrops? How do you think that companies could continue to evolve and improve the airdrop mechanisms in the future?
Yeah, so I think I learned this from a group, but like, I think the purpose of airdrop is like it's almost like marketing incentivization schemes, right? And I I think at the foremost, it's like at the forefront, like the first thing you want to ask is like if I give my users, like tokens to spend, like my own token, like how do you get them to be number one more loyal? How do you get them to use your protocol more? How do you get them to like this contribute back to your ecosystem? Other than just pumping the price of the token itself, right? Like it's what I mean. Instead of like, oh, great team, let's go pump. And I think that is the crux of like the question that the airdrop space needs to answer. I don't think it's a clear path right now, but you could if you take for example a lot of loyalty programs in non-crypto space, right? Like when you fly at airlines a lot and you use a credit card a lot, like they you can only use those points back on to buy more flights, right? Because you are a loyal user, and because you're a loyal user, you don't mind because like I just get free credits in the future, right? So it incentivizes a certain type of behavior. Same thing for credit cards, right? Credit card points farming has been there for like decades, and same thing. It's like, oh, this credit card company has made enough meaningful partnerships with airlines, hotels, and whatnot for me to like get my bang for buck. And I think that something that something similar, some similar concept to that hopefully can make its way into the crypto space as well. Instead of just like, oh cool, thanks for giving me 100 tokens, and I'm gonna like try and I'm gonna sell 10 and pump the rest of the 90 up as much as I can, and just keep piping it, shilling it. Yeah, and yeah, so I think that's on the design aspect of it, right? And then on the civil detection part of it, yeah, I think that's an adversarial game. It's always going to get harder and harder as like farmers get more and more sophisticated. So I think as with any like fraud detection type space in general, like it's always like the two sides of the equation, and like we are trying to get better at preventing civils, but then the civils are getting more sophisticated. And for example, like I think we published what we did with Wormhole like 3 or 4 weeks ago, a month ago, and then immediately that post got like 600 or 700 likes, like just like that, right? It was like a guide of and then everybody was just liking it and retweeting it because it was more like how to farm airdrops instead. It wasn't like how to prevent farming. It was more like see what they did and then like find a way around that, right? And that's why it was liked a lot. And so, I mean, we decided to open source all this knowledge so that like people, it's just like, I think as with any industry like that, adversarial cat and mouse, like you keep wanting to, I think the bar has to keep raising and hopefully there'll be this like equilibrium where, you only have for example, if you're a quant trader at like the top HFT in the world is spending weekends farming airdrops and like spending their instead of like printing millions of dollars for the hedge fund, then maybe they deserve it because like the opportunity cost may have been higher, right? So I think it's going to reach some equilibrium at some point. So we'll see. I'm not sure how it'll go, but that's my high level thoughts on this space. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I mean for me, my takeaway there primarily, especially as you related it to like Web2 loyalty, is we need to do a better job at aligning incentives with the actions that we want to see, and not just like throwing money out there and hoping that people will stick around because there might be more money or because the token's going to go up in value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I definitely like to touch on just personally, because I'm very much involved in the space of decentralized social, and I think you'd have to be living under a rock not to have seen like the tremendous growth by like Farcaster, for instance. What do you think are some of the opportunities that are presented through decentralized social apps and protocols like Farcaster when it comes to the on-chain data that we can, I guess, browse and analyze as well? And how is Allium looking at that and how it can integrate that to its products?
I'm personally very excited about it, like from a pure like nerd sniping perspective. We haven't done that much on it yet. So the reason I chose to go to grad school was to analyze social networks, like graph, like how do you cluster different users together? How do you recommend users, different friends, different things to buy within their certain communities? And even in the previous AI company I was at, like we were just like ingesting all the Twitter data, like who was subtweeting, quote tweeting who, forming those graphs, finding out what was bots versus not bots on public Twitter data. Sorry, but before Elon Musk, I think, killed a lot of the fire hose. And so I'm personally very excited. I think you can see that like a lot of the promise of crypto probably in the previous cycle, the narrative was like, oh, like all these like tech giants, they own the social network graph, right? You can never transport it. And I think Farcaster is very exciting that they show that like, potentially that could be an alternative, right? And that you can actually port your friend graph over between different platforms. And I think that promise is always very exciting for anybody. But I mean, as with anything, it's very early days. Like I think consumer social networks are very, very hard to get right. It's just I mean, I have a Farcaster account. And it's nice to use. I'm just like, I cannot wait to analyze the data, right? Just right now, we just haven't had the time to do it yet. But I'm pretty sure there's lots of interesting stuff there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that I'm thinking, especially as we were talking about airdrops and Sybil detection, I think it'll present a nice new facet of understanding the wallet from a very personal perspective. Like, are these real people? What does their engagement look like on a social platform like Farcaster, right? I think it definitely adds a lot of complexity, good complexity, to understanding wallet data. So I think that's one that I'm personally very interested in terms of like Sybil detection. But of course, there's, I think, a lot more there. I'm personally building on Farcaster a loyalty mechanism. So as we talked about that, my brain was really working overtime about how to think about some of the problems that we currently see in that space and how we can bring over some of the things that are working in the Web2 space as well. So,
yeah.
Cool. I mean, as we're reaching the top of the hour, I definitely want to make sure that if there's anything that was left unsaid that you think that we should be talking about Allium, let's definitely talk about it. Like, what is there going on in Allium right now, or things that you think are worth mentioning that we might have missed?
Well, I mean, maybe just to restate it, I think, I think generally, if any of you have a data problem, either analyzing something or making sure that your application, you don't want to make like 1 billion RPC calls, you want to like a very performant platform, or you need to help out your accounting and finance. We can probably help find there. We have, I think, 22 chains today. I think our goal has been to add almost one chain every single week for the rest of the year, and it includes the super chain, the sub chains, and all that. So we've been almost on par per week now, one chain per week on average. Some of them come in batches, and osmosis took the longest because we have to run our own nodes. But basically, TLDR, we hopefully cover enough breadth that almost in probably the next 3 months we will cover like 80% or 90% of people's use cases. Yeah.
That's incredible. So what's the call to action for anybody who wants to get started today? If you're an analyst out there and you're listening to this and you want to start trialing it, what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, for the trial, quite straightforward. We have a sign up form. The reason why it's not accessible to public is because we just can't handle that many people yet today, right? We cannot have 10,000 people like I said, we just like to make sure we can deliver quality at a certain scale, and just sign up, tell me your use case, and yeah, if we can help, we'll definitely help. If not, like I won't waste your time. Either normally I'll tell you, either we can help you today, or we can help you in 1 month when we reach that point, or we just don't do it, right? So you'll get a clear answer pretty quickly. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So,
I mean, I appreciate that candid response, and certainly, I personally will be signing up. And then you'll let me know if you can help me. If not, let me know. I'll go look somewhere else. But Ethan, honestly, this has been this has been a good chat, and I'm honestly really happy that you took the time to speak with us. This is probably one of my favorite conversations that I've had throughout the entire season of Onchain Alpha. So I'm really glad that we got you on, and I'm really excited to kind of see what Allium continues to do.
Yeah, me too. And thanks for having me on. And yeah, I mean, it's the last one, right?
This is the last one for Onchain Alpha. Yeah, so what we normally do is we start, podcasts around a very specific topic so that we can find the best people to talk to, and then we cover that, and then we just repurpose that content through newsletters, through shorts on YouTube, but also minting content. So a lot of this will be available across our entire distribution network for you, for your audience, for our audience, of course, to learn more about Allium. But yeah, we're starting our next series next week, and that'll be really interesting. And I think it'll touch on some of the things that we talked about here, but I think it'll dive a little bit more deeply into those topics.
Okay. Thank you, Humpty. And yeah, all the best. Take care. See you, everybody. Bye.